Today's capstone project will be in regards to catatonic schizophrenia. I chose this topic because of personal real life experiences and plus because it's something that I have been studying throughout Henderson State University, and it has been my motive to obtain my Bachelor's of Integrated Studies with focals in psychology and sociology. I want to show you a quick PowerPoint, but before I do, let me introduce myself. My name is Lisa Wade. I will be graduating this semester, and I have obtained employment at a mental health facility, and I am more than excited to be on this journey in which I am going to be helping others that suffer from debilitating disorders, mental health disorders. It's a passion of mine, and I think that part of my journey at Henderson State University and my education is what got me to the place where I am today. Now I will show you part of the PowerPoint. Delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech, disorganized or catatonic behavior, and negative symptoms. These are all part of catatonic schizophrenia. People may experience involuntary imitation or someone else's movements, repetitive movements, or restlessness, muscular, slow bodily movement, or stiff muscles, cognitive, slow EES, inactivity, or ambia. They may have mood disorder, sadness, or limited range of motion, and they may also be mute or have staring spells. The staring spells are the one thing that I will write about in this paper. The muteness is also something that affects people with catatonic schizophrenia in a severe way, although it's very rare. Some of the features of catatonic schizophrenia, as you can see in this video clip, is that it may involve symptoms such as staying still, fast or strange movements, lack of speech, and unusual behavior. You can see that the lady has her arm extended and one is upward, and she may be in a fixed position for long periods of time. This is something that is also a clinical feature of catatonic schizophrenia. As you can see here, medications that are antipsychotics, sedatives, procedures, electroconvulsive therapy or ECT, specialists, psychiatrists, neurologists, primary care doctors, and emergency medicine doctors. These are all part of the process for treating, diagnosing, and lifelong care for a patient with catatonic schizophrenia. And then I have my references. Now I'm going to read you my paper. This is something that's very personal and means a lot to me. I call it Between Reality and Delusion. My senior capstone project, as I mentioned, is mental health disorders with specific focus on catatonic schizophrenia. I have a profound personal connection and experience with debilitating and life-altering disorders that led me on my journey of educational and clinical research, and what my motive is for pursuing a Bachelor's in Integrated Study with focus on psychology and sociology. My personal experience and introduction to catatonic schizophrenia began 9 years ago when my youngest son woke up at the age of 16 in a frozen state. The first 2 years would prove to be chaos for my son, family, and doctors. My son was the typical teenager before this happened, and catatonic schizophrenia seized his mind and left him living a life between reality and delusion. Catatonic schizophrenia only occurs in about 1% of the population and is almost never heard of in the last few decades. There have been great strides in treatments such as medications, and although it's controversial. ECT is often used to reboot the brain, but it doesn't come without side effects such as amnesia or severe muscle rigidness, which often deters patients from wanting to continue this type of therapy. I have researched and educated myself over the last 9 years about my son's diagnosis, and the only way I can explain his journey is to tell the story. Modern medicine seeks to explain the unexplainable and cure the uncurable, but we want answers and resolutions to help ourselves and loved ones live healthy, normal lives. However, this doesn't always happen. I have worked in healthcare for over 24 years, and catatonic schizophrenia, I can say, is the most complicated of the mental health disorders that I have witnessed and studied. The only way I can explain it is to explain what happened to my son, who is now 25, when he was diagnosed with rare catatonic schizophrenia. He woke up that morning and he was unable to speak or move. His body was fixated and he was literally frozen. He was admitted to the hospital for what they thought at first was a possible rare brain disorder or form of epilepsy, which is also part of his diagnosis. He does have epilepsy. But within the few weeks of having multiple doctors from all over the United States and having MRIs and multiple tests and him being seemingly what was a normal teenager, it was discovered that he had a rare form of catatonic schizophrenia. He would remain in this frozen state for months. The following months and years would prove to be unlike anything that a person could imagine. He would begin ECT treatments and experimental medications in order to unlock his mind and bring him back to reality. However, it was often without success, and when his mind was unlocked, so were his delusions. I remember the first time I was able to speak to my son after months of silence, and he would always tell me that he felt like he was floating around the room, watching his body, telling it to move and his voice to speak, but he couldn't. However, when he would have ECT or the experimental medicines, he said he would feel sad because he could move and talk, and he was being controlled by the inner voices and thoughts that weren't his own. This would be even more disturbing to him. This was something that occurred for over a 4-year period, and it was extremely heartbreaking. The reality of life for my son would be numerous inpatient stays and what he now calls home away from home. With each occurrence of his brain retaliating on him, his condition would get worse or demand more medication with more side effects. He was unable to walk without falling, and the voices he heard held him prisoner, telling him not to speak to others or that they would harm him. It came to a point in his diagnosis that he would never understand reality as he once knew it, that the delusions would be his norm. His bleak diagnosis and lack of hope from some of the best psychiatrists and neurologist teams left me starving for answers and knowledge, which is what led me on my educational journey. I never gave up hope for my son, and I never accepted that he would be trapped in between reality and delusion. I kept journals of his ever-changing symptoms and side effects and reached out to NAMI for support and education. However, it wasn't until I enrolled at Henderson State University that I would find my greatest source of strength and knowledge that I would need to help my son learn about his debilitating disorder. Everyone knows and says that knowledge is power, and that is the truth. The more educated I became about his illness, the more confident I felt that remission was possible. I took multiple classes that helped me understand various forms of mental health issues and brain disorders. In a way, I found peace in my ability to comprehend and understand through knowledge. There were multiple professors that I had that I reached out to that were all able to offer me advice and give me resources. Doctors often don't give unfavorable diagnoses, or they often do give unfavorable diagnoses when there is no cure. And whenever they do this, I really feel like it's failure on their part, because there is hope and there is a way to educate oneself, and the need to be educated and the desire to understand an illness that a patient has for themselves and for their loved ones and family is so important. It's part of the process of healing and acceptance, and it also gives you the courage to move forward. Move into my next page. I remember sitting in abnormal psychology one day, and I was feeling hopeless when Professor Travis Langley started talking about schizophrenia and the treatments that have evolved. I became so emotional that I had to literally force myself to stay in his class because I was hanging on his every word. This was the day I learned about ECT, and it gave me strength to tell the doctors that I no longer wanted my son to have ECT. I was awarded his guardianship and stopped his treatments. He was suffering from long-term memory loss, but without the ECT, they were threatening to take him to the state hospital and continue the research. I learned in Dr. Langley's class that patients have the right, and that there are treatments that work for one person but not for another. Patients have the right to say no to things that they may not agree upon for their treatments. My education gave me what I needed to stand up for my child and go beyond the conventional treatment. It's now 9 years after my son was diagnosed with catatonic schizophrenia, and last year, for the first time, he has gone into remission, living a life that the doctor said he would never have. I can't explain my gratitude or the emotional connection to Henderson State University. I just know that it was part of my journey in helping my son find a treatment that worked significantly and influenced my career choice in mental health. Although medicine may not have all the answers, knowledge can help explain what is known. I would also like to say I'm truly blessed to have had all the support that I've had at Henderson State University. My son recently told me how proud he was that I was going to be graduating soon, and how he was thankful that there were places you could go and learn about life and illness. I recently brought him to the campus, and we walked around, and I saw him smile a real smile. He was relaxed and happy. We sat on a bench and watched the infamous Henderson squirrels, and he said, "I think I can go here someday." The reality of catatonic schizophrenia is that there is hope. The delusion is that such a diagnosis should be accepted. Without education, there is no hope. There are no cures, and we lack the confidence and ability to learn from others and help others live happy, healthy, beautiful lives. This is for my son, Mason. I thank you for my time, and I appreciate the opportunity to have obtained my education here at Henderson State University. I plan on using my knowledge and skills in my current new position at a mental health facility to continue to help others that struggle with debilitating disorders such as catatonic schizophrenia, depression, and all others that fall under the guidelines of mental illness. I will conclude my presentation now, and I thank you again for your time.